my current role, I'm asked to define leadership on a pretty regular basis. But here's the kicker. After about $15,000 in student debt, and 2 years of my life that resulted in a master's degree of leadership, I can't define leadership for anyone. Your personal definition of leadership, whether you define yourself as a leader or not, depends on how you process and reflect on experiences that you have every single day. Leadership is not about who you are. Leadership is about what you do. The way you act, react, and reflect on experiences today ultimately impacts how you act, react, and reflect on experiences tomorrow. When I was 8, my mother won a basketball hoop from Canadian Tire. And when her name was drawn and that hoop ended up at the end of our gravel driveway, I couldn't have really appreciated at 8 years old how it would ultimately change the course of my life. I loved it. I practiced in the morning before school started, which my neighbors didn't really appreciate. And I'd come home after school and I'd practice until it got dark, which my neighbors didn't really appreciate. But I got pretty good. I played through high school and through university. And then after I graduated and realized I couldn't move half as quick as I once could, I started to coach. That's me. In the back row, with all the tall girls, hopes and aspirations of being a 6-foot-tall WNBA player. Didn't really work out, but nonetheless, I'm here today, and the experiences that I had, this kicked off my leadership journey. The experiences that I had as a player and now coach have impacted the way I lead myself and those around me. The experiences that I've had are completely different from everyone in here, everyone in Toronto, everyone across Canada. Nobody's had the same experiences. What experiences do you have that kicked off your leadership journey? What makes you different from the person sitting next to you right now? There's a couple of things I want to hit on before I really kind of start to dig deep. The first is that when I talk about leadership, I'm not talking about a position of power, but instead I'm talking about the ability that you have every day to lead yourself and to lead those around you. I think all too often the terms leadership and management are interchanged, but it's so important to note that not all leaders are managers, and not all managers are leaders. Second, I want to introduce you to the idea of micro or small scale versus macro or large-scale leadership, and we're going to use Prime Minister Trudeau as an example. So appreciating that in both of these pictures, he holds a position of power, but I want you to look beyond that and look at it from a leadership lens. Before he was Prime Minister Trudeau, he was Mr. Trudeau, and he was a teacher, so he'd get up every morning, go to school, interact with the same 20 or 30 students or colleagues, and lead from within that group. Fast forward about 15 years, when Mr. Trudeau was elected Prime Minister Trudeau, and while he still may have a core group of 20 or 30 people around him, the decisions that he makes and his leadership impacts millions of people across Canada and the rest of the world. You don't need to be on a world stage to change the lives of those around you. In fact, I'm willing to bet that most life-changing experiences happen at a micro-leadership level. I didn't have trouble getting a job when I was in university. In fact, I think I got just about every job I ever applied for. So when I graduated, or when I wrote my final exams, I thought I'd have a career in 2 weeks. Not so realistic. But to make ends meet, I took a job working retail, selling sporting goods. It was what I knew. That job, I might add, was probably one of the most challenging positions I've ever held. The pay was pretty low. The hours were long. And I had some pretty difficult customer interactions. So after 150 job applications and 2 callbacks, 0 job offers, I was working retail 5 months later. Until I received a phone call. I received a phone call that started my journey to where I am today. It was from a colleague, someone that I had worked with when I was at school. We didn't work together that often, but something that I said or something that I did stuck with them and he called me and offered me a 2-month contract. It's like, amazing, 2 months, it's double what I'm making right now. Incredible, I'm all over it. So I took it, and that 2 months turned to 6 months to a year, and 6 years later, I have a career as a student affairs professional. I'm here today to introduce you to the idea of leading in your everyday life. So I have a couple of tips that I use on a pretty regular basis to get you to start to think about leadership differently. Leadership tip number 1, take every experience as an opportunity to learn something new and different. I strongly believe that you can learn to be a leader. American educational theorist David Kolb suggested that experience is actually an excellent way to learn and develop. But further to that, he developed a 4-step model to walk you through the process. And I'm going to walk you through something that happened to me very recently. Yesterday, the 5-year strategic plan for my current program was due. Last week, I walked into my supervisor's office, my director's office, and I sat down, and I told her I probably wasn't going to have it done. I needed an extension. Step number 2, reflective observation. How did I feel? Not awesome. I walked into her office. I asked for the extension. I was embarrassed. I don't like not getting stuff done when I say I'm going to get them done, but I had to do it. Step number 3, abstract conceptualization. What did I learn? I learned that my time management skills aren't necessarily where I thought they were. And then finally, how am I going to implement that moving forward? Active experimentation. I've started to book time in my calendar when I know I have a big project coming up. And further to that, I'm going to use the time that I blocked to actually do what I said I was going to do. I'm going to walk you through the exact same process right now. So the first thing I want you to do is thinking about an experience that you've had this week, this month. It doesn't have to be life-changing, but something that's sticking in your mind right now. Okay. The next, I want you to tell me how you feel about it. How did that situation or experience make you feel in that very moment? How do you feel afterwards? What did you learn about yourself, and what did you learn about the people around you from that experience? And then finally, what are you going to do different next time? How are you going to let this experience change the way you think moving forward? Reflection takes practice. Leadership takes practice, but I promise if you start to implement this into your experiences that you have, you're ultimately going to grow and develop into a better leader tomorrow than you were today. Leadership tip number 2, manifest the qualities of leadership that you value. Be the leader that you want to be, not the leader that someone else wants you to be. Don't try to be something that you're not. We have all received an item of clothing as a gift from a very well-meaning relative, but there's something always a little off. It doesn't fit right. It's either too small or too big, or it has cats on it. I'm really sorry if any of you have a cat sweater on right now. And truthfully, nothing feels as good as when you walk into a store and you pull a shirt off the rack and you walk into the change room and you put it on and you look in the mirror and, oh, I look pretty fresh. And then you take that shirt off and you walk up to the cash register and you exchange the shirt that you got as a gift for that new shirt that you picked out yourself. Think about leadership in the same context. You can't be the leader that someone else already is. Find the qualities in the people that you admire, your role models, and how can you start to build your own personal leadership philosophy? And finally, leadership is a choice. Choose to be a leader, but also realize how your choices impact those around you. Are you someone that's happy with the status quo? You're willing to do something because everyone else is doing it, or are you willing to step outside the box and challenge the norm? Choose to be a leader. Choose to control the controllables, because the uncontrollables ultimately will take care of themselves. Choose to lead others the way that you would want to be led. And finally, choose to realize the impact of your actions on everyone around you. Your definition of leadership is based on the experiences that you've had. You can choose if, when, and where you lead, but appreciate those experiences for what they are, a chance for you to grow. Take the qualities of those around you that you admire and build your own leadership philosophy, something that you can stand behind, something that you're proud of, something that you'll share with others. And finally, choose to lead. Leadership comes in all shapes and sizes. It's the single parent who chooses to commute to school for 2 hours each day. It's your neighbor who chooses to volunteer in your community on the weekend. It's a friend, mentor, or professor that have chosen to share their perspective simply for the purpose of enhancing yours. It's you. You have the opportunity to lead every single day. Choose to.